Hello to anybody that is interested in beekeeping, especially in a horizontal hive. This is a recent adaptation that I made to some plans that I've found online. There's plenty of them available, and just wanted to walk around and document some of the things that I've done. So, plans are pretty typical, and what I was looking at with building this hive was accomplishing some things in regards to feeding and winterization, at least in my area. That was something I couldn't quite get around with the ones I was building before. So what I've done is I've actually worked with another beekeeper, who this one is actually for, and they had some requests, and we're thinking about how to work around some of the things that we experience in cooler climates, Central Ohio for this one specifically, where weather can swing wildly, especially in the spring. So, the original plans are designed for a pretty standard 2 by 12 base, and I kept that pretty much the same. But as you can see, or at the top here, the top cover is about 6 inches deep, and a lot of the plans I found were about 2 inches or so, which didn't allow for a lot of room underneath if you wanted to do anything with feeding, or my standard hive, Langstroth hive. Winterization, I used quilt boards, and that obviously wasn't going to work at that depth. So I made a taller top, and the request that was made for this one was actually to slope it a little bit. And this one is flat on the floor at this point, waiting for paint. And you'll see that with the way that I angled the lid, you get about an inch higher at the front than you do the back, which is going to allow for some better drainage. Now I know that this could probably easily be accomplished with just adjusting the stand or how it's placed so it would drain off, but it wasn't really that difficult. All I did was really, the top is the same dimensions. I just angled the support piece that it sits on, dropped it down about an inch in the back, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. So let's take a look inside, and you can see, actually before we do that, you see here at the front, you got 3 openings that can be opened or closed. And what I've done is I've made some robbing screens, which, depending on dearth, can be a particular issue. So pretty standard robbing screen, about an inch deep, 1/8 inch hardware cloth over top, a couple of screws that fit perfectly on top of the landing board, and can screw in fairly easily when needed. Went ahead and made 3, one for each entrance, but they could easily be closed off if that situation were to arise. So on the sides, you'll see that I've included a holder for frame holders. The individual frame holders I would not recommend. They're kind of flimsy, and what I've found is that I just set the frame on the ground. How are those ankle biters going to get to your ankles when they're not rolling around on the ground? So, individual has got a more sturdy frame holder, so it's one piece, and will hold off real well. I wanted to make sure that we had some ventilation here on the sides. What I do have is some 1/8 inch hardware cloth that will go inside each of those holes, and this one is designed for a bee escape. So if for some reason some do get up top, they can climb out without too much problem. So I haven't put those in yet just because this one is waiting for paint, and I wanted to be able to get that covered up real well before. So looking inside, you'll see Got latches on each side just to make sure that it's held down. You could easily accomplish that with some bricks or rocks. So opening it up here, chains are set so that it leans a little bit backward. On top, I've got standard top boards, each of which has an opening for basically a mason jar lid, but it also fits perfectly with those round feeders like so, and you can easily just take out the cover, throw your feeder on top of that, and these will close, or this will close up without any difficulty whatsoever. So again, you have space to do internal feeding. Don't have to worry about robbing or stimulating robbing because of an external feed. I made 3 of those, 2 of which are designed for feeders. The third one, the request was made that actually have a hardware screen, so they're just for ventilation. And again, ventilation was important, so each board has 2 in it. And then with our top covers, there are 3 larger pieces, which will slide out easily. And then there are smaller pieces, smaller spacers, that allow you to make for adjustment of how many frames you've started with. So if you're starting with a nuke or a package, it very easily can be condensed down to one corner, closing off the others. You could run 2 separate colonies in here if you wanted, or 3, I suppose, if you're doing singles, but it doesn't give you a whole lot of room for build-up there. Made sure that there was enough spacers to adjust and adapt as needed. With this one, it has a leaderboard so that you can adjust side to side. The other thing that was requested was a queen excluder. So what I did was I made another leaderboard, cut a hole in the center, and used a half of an 8-frame queen excluder. Just screwed that on. So now if you wanted to contain the queen in one particular area, you could do that without any difficulty, and separate her out very easily. Space for this provides you room for, I did narrow it just a little bit, not narrow this way, but side to side. So this one will fit 30 frames with the leaderboard. If you took the leaderboard out, you could fit 31. So just for frame of reference as to how much you could get in there. So again, standard deep frames works perfectly well with a 2x12 outside dimension or outside boards. All right. So then, the other request that was made with this particular hive was to include a screen bottom. And I'll get to that in a moment, but you can see there are spacers down here, or openings down here, where there's 1/8-inch hardware cloth. And I included the cutouts. The cutouts I held on to and then was able to fashion them so that they fit up underneath and can be easily removed or replaced. So as for winterization, what I have found works well for me, and I know this is one of those topics where people have different areas or different ways of winterizing. I like to use a quilt board. So I made a couple of quilt boards to fit on top. I make my quilt boards a little bit of ventilation on the sides just for airflow in the winter. But I also make them so that they have a shim attached to the bottom. So that way it leaves space for feeding. If you do sugar patties fondant or just dry sugar. I leave some space so that it will sit on top of that with a little bit of room on the frames. So I was able to make 3 of these. 2 of them are the dimensions for a standard Langstroth hive. If I wanted to use it in something else, I could very easily do so. But the third one needed to be a little bit narrower. So I'm going to get these on, and you'll be able to see from a distance how that plays out. All right, so the one in the middle is a little narrower. I wouldn't say that it's 8 frame size, but I just measured it out and built it after I had the other 2 there, and really just measured how much room I had. So that fits well. What I tend to do is some newspaper down, then some dry sugar, and then I will fill this with pine shavings. You can use burlap. You can use any sort of filler there that will absorb moisture. That's my main reason for using them, is for moisture management. And then on top of that, I will use a sheet of insulation. And this is why there was so much depth in that top cover. So when you close it down, there's enough space for all of that to fit. So now, spring, winter, it does leave for some dead space, but when using this without the quilt boards, take those off real quick. Without the quilt boards, having the top covers on there, there was a lot of space, and if not cleared out of all the bees, there would be some extra room for them to congregate and hang out. But top covers should keep everything in. Once that's covered up, you are good to go. But if for some reason 1 or 2 got in there, the person that I built this for actually wanted me to use these bee escapes, and these are the ones that are designed for inner covers. So when you're trying to get them out for honey collection, put one of those on the inner cover, and they can climb out fairly easily. Thought it was fairly simplistic design, but he wanted them to be put in to the top, and that's where it is going to fit eventually once painting is done. So a couple of nails will hold that in. That way any bees that happen to get in the top can get out. So that is how I fashioned the inside, how I considered winterization and feeding. But the other question, or the other request, was to make the screen bottom board. So looking at that, close it down here and look underneath. And this one is designed, was going to be put on probably some sawhorses or something that will support it. So as I tip this up, you'll be able to see how I got the screen bottom boards done. So I basically took the piece that was cut out. I put another side piece that overlaps about 1 inch, and a couple of pieces that will rotate. So they're kind of like picture frames. So you just rotate those out of the way. I did put a little handle piece here. It's not really much of a handle, just something to grab onto. But you can pull that out, slide it out from underneath, and now you've got a screen bottom board. Also had extra holes here so that regardless of whether or not you have your screen open or closed. You did have good ventilation. That was another thing that I wanted to make sure that worked well with this hive, was to having good airflow. And what we know is that with bees, if they will manage that as they manage it, they may end up closing those off on their own, but wanted to make sure it was there to begin with. So again, in the winter time, or if you want it closed off, just slide that in and turn your handles there, and now it is locked back in place and held with a screen on top. So those are the modifications, adaptations that I made to the horizontal hive, which hopefully helps. A lot of what I was doing was building the base and then adjusting measurements for everything that I needed from there. I know some of them, the top is designed to sit right on top of the 2x12, but I went ahead and built this extra piece around it. Provides a little bit better support for the lid. I went ahead and just kind of cut down ½ inch, this ½ inch by ½ inch framing. Now I say framing, but it's just a border to make sure that the top covers are in place and don't move or shift. A little bit of a gap there so that they're easily held in. So this has been my adaptation modifications to Langstroth hive for what I feel will work best for me. Hopefully it's helped to give you some ideas or thought process as to what might work for you, and was easy to build. I was able to build this one with a miter saw and table saw. The only thing that I needed was the dado stack to cut out the portions for where the frames sit, and also to inset the bottom board as well. Beyond that, screwdriver, some nails, and it was pretty simplistic. Chains, hinges, and latches to go along. So I find that building my equipment is just as fun as the beekeeping side of it. So over the winter and whenever there's some downtime, I will go ahead and fashion some things together. And this one seems to work out pretty well. So we're going to get this one into production here very soon. Hope this helps. Good luck.